welcome to another episode of IT Pro TV. I'm your host, Mike Roderick, and with me today is Mr. Sean Oriano. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Another exciting day here at IT Pro TV land. We've got our Kali Linux series going on, and in this episode, we're going to be looking at some of the tools we can use when we're doing penetration tests and trying to test web servers and web application, right? That's a very common point of attack. It's that public-facing point for most companies. So it is a common target, which means we've got to do a good, thorough job testing that and making sure that it's secured properly and the applications on it are secured properly. And Kali doesn't fall short here, does it, Sean? It brings a lot of tools to bear so we can do this kind of thing.
Oh yeah, there's an amazing amount of tools in this product already, and one of the areas they really don't skimp on at all is what we have out of the box to do testing of web applications. And so we're going to take a look at some of these tools to see what they can do for us and where they kind of fit in and what they're expected to address. And I'll be kind of upfront with you on this one. There is some crossover amongst these tools. So be prepared for the fact that some of these tools will have very similar functionality, but that's actually, when I look at it, it's not really a problem for me because, hey, there's crossover. This tool does this tool does this. Means I now have a choice of which one's best going to work for me. I don't just have one thing that's gonna do the job. So that's always a great thing to have.
We've talked about having more than one tool so we can trust but verify our results as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Making sure that we're getting true results.
Yeah, the way I look at it, there's no tool that does everything 100% perfectly. They do miss something, and this is one of those situations where you really kind of want to test these things out on your own in your lab. All these things should be tested out in the lab anyway, but you really kind of want to take a look at something like this because some of these results can vary wildly. I have it for years in stuff like this situation. One of the things I'm going to bring up is a vulnerability scanner. Vulnerability scanners, I've compared just in some of my classes and some of my presentations. I compared Nessus and Nexpose.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, and the presentations and all aren't meant to pick on them. It's just meant to show that, hey, here's both equally good vulnerability scanners, but the results between the two are different. One will pick up some things that say they're critical, in fact, which is really scary. One of them says, "Oh, these are very serious, critical, urgent, issues, things on fire. You better fix it." And then this one says, "Oh, there's no problem. Everything's all good." It's like that's a big problem there. If I just got minor issues, that's still of a concern to me. Why are they over here and not here?
Right.
But if it's big, hey, the roof's going to fall on you. Why is there a difference there? So just FYI, test these things out. And fortunately, you don't just have to test them out blind. These tools, you can test just about all of these out against a pre-configured vulnerable virtual machine. Remember, one of the things we mentioned way back at the beginning of this whole journey is the fact that they do make vulnerable virtual machines you can just plug in, drop into your virtualization software of choice, as a matter of fact, turn it on, and start testing. And the cool thing about having that is not only do you have the work done for you, you also have something that has a lot of major technologies you can test against, including databases such as MySQL and those guys. And then even on top of that, those vulnerabilities, for the most part, they're all documented clearly by the developer. So now know purposely what they put in there and what should be showing up. So you can really do that whole trust but verify thing. They're telling you these are bad. If you don't find at the very least those, or a good number of those, there's a problem. You may want to see if that product is one you really want to use. If it misses enough of them, that's just not good.
Either your technique is off or the tool is not doing what it's supposed to do, and need to check that out.
Yeah, definitely ask questions. Ask questions to make sure you understand, why those results are the way they are. And if you've answered that question to your satisfaction, then heck, go ahead and use it. I wouldn't tell you not to, Just telling you, make sure that you know that those limitations are there. Don't let the bad guys find out, and you've gone ahead and signed off on a report saying, to the best of my ability. And that could leave you up to a lot of problems later on. Not only are you looking stupid and them questioning your abilities, but also it could open you to legal repercussions too. If it's big enough, they're going to say, well, that should have been picked up. What's your problem?
And that might hurt my job prospects in the future, either one of those scenarios. So
Yeah,
I'm going to have a future as a pen tester anyway.
Yeah, there's people that have been known to actually take the results out of Nessus, and these are not reputable people that are doing this. They'll take the results out of something like Nessus and just copy and paste it someplace else and say that's their findings, and that makes you look even worse because you don't understand what the vulnerability is. So if you're doing that, you probably don't. You copy it over, paste it in there. Don't tell anybody it's coming from Nessus, and then someone looks and goes, "Hey, I recognize that." Then they might challenge you on it. Now you show you don't know anything, and that you're even plagiarizing stuff from another place, and that will end your career pretty quickly. You'll get decapitated by someone really quick if that happens. So yeah, don't do that. I've stuck some stuff in my reports that I found in Nessus and Nexpose that I found were something that needed to be cited, but it was very clear that's where it came from. I always cited it saying, yeah, this is where this came from, and I just pulled it over, said rewriting it for you.
Right.
So people have done that too, but be careful when you're doing this. Know your environment.
All right. Well, Sean, what's you got a favorite tool you want to start with, or where do you want to go with this?
Well, let's just take a brief look at what Kali offers you in a broad sense in this category. So what I've got here in my virtual machine is I've gone under the Kali Linux menu. I have my web applications, and then you can look over on our menus that are cascading out. You can see we have one for doing CMS systems, databases. And there's even separate tools up and above this for doing databases, if you can believe it. There's 3 here. That's not anywhere near being the full roster of tools we have. There's some of our IDS IPS identification. Well, we still got that coming up on how to identify those. Well, they've got a tool right here for that. But then some stuff that we really kind of haven't seen before, or not in this way. And CEH, we talked about different ways of testing web applications. Fuzzing was brought up, but there was really not much guidance brought up on fuzzing. It was just kind of, here's what fuzzing is, and if you want to do fuzzing, then yeah, go research it. That's kind of what the way CEH is. And heck, when you look at it, you can't really blame them. Heck, when I wrote that CEH book, when I wrote that thing, I mentioned that in there as well, and didn't really cover much with it except point people to someplace to get more information on it. Because to really understand that, you kind of got to know stuff about development and that to really get the full power of it. And that's a big can of worms you're opening just on that. But what fuzzing is, just in a very brief sense, in a nutshell, is it means you're feeding different ranges and different combinations of values into an application to watch and see how it responds. Because when you feed a range of values into it, and maybe even outside or in different ways than it's expecting, that application can do funny things and may even give people access or allow them to do stuff they shouldn't be allowed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you got a field on a web form that's expecting your phone number, and what if somebody puts pound symbols all the way through it, and all of a sudden a shell pops open, or an error message pops up that spits out all kinds of information about the back-end database, or it crashes a server. The database hangs up because it's trying to process this, and there's a data type set on the field that it's trying to dump that value into. So fuzzing it allows you to throw stuff at it that's not expected. A lot of times, I know when you're developing applications, right? You're developing it, so you're like, okay, here's a username field, here's a password field, here's a phone number field, and as you're developing it, you're typing in a dummy username, a dummy last name or password, and a dummy phone number. You never even think about, well, what if somebody put their name in the phone number field, right? So those are the kind of things that fuzzing can find, expose some of those weaknesses in the code in those applications.
Yeah, they're starting to check for a little bit more, and it's tools like this that are helping it out. But yeah, you're right. It's when you're developing an application, it used to be that you kind of had blinders on. You wrote it with a certain process in mind, and you wrote towards that process. So you modeled it out, and you said this is the way things are going to move. And yeah, if I have something that's collecting names and phone numbers, well, am I not going to put someone's blood type in there? That's not part of it, So why bother?
And writing all those darn error-catching loops is such a pain, and it doubles the length of your project. I mean, who has time for that?
Yeah, that's called a patch in billable hours.
Yeah.
But these things with fuzzing are designed to help you pick those things up.
Web Slayer, Power Fuzzer, great names again.
That sounds like a metal band, doesn't it? Power Fuzzer. Woo! Come on. Opening for Motley Crue. But we have, we've got quite a few players in that category as far as web applications, and we got, web proxies. Maybe we can zoom that up. My big fat head's in the way of that menu. Okay, there we go. So we have, the web application proxies. This one is actually an interesting category. The main one we're going to look at here is going to be Burp Suite. We've seen that before, but there's also, when we look at it, we're going to take a look at Vega in here. But the one that's interesting is Peros. They have Peros Proxy in there, and if you recall, I mentioned this during the CEH course. I also mentioned it during our DFI course when we were doing investigations there. Peros Proxy has been put out to pasture. You can still get it, but it's been replaced by OWASP. So but you can see OWASP is on that menu as well. So if you like using Peros Proxy, you got it there. But I would recommend that you kind of just really think about if that's the one you really want to use. Probably just go with OWASP.
We got a question in the chat room there from Michaela. She's asking, would you restrict fuzzing to test environments only if there is a risk of crashing the live server, or just let the customer know what the risk is ahead of time and do it on their production, or leave that choice up to them?
I would say if you have the opportunity, test environments that's what they're there for. That's what you want. That's where you want to catch it. That test and development environment. But if it gets deployed, if you find that input validation and fuzzing may be an issue, it's something that you want to talk to the client first to tell them that this is what the problem is, to give them a chance to maybe address it without you going in and penetrating that vulnerability to see how bad it gets. Or they may decide, hey, rock and roll, go ahead. See if you crash it, we got stuff to restore it. People sometimes will do that, but I wouldn't count on it if that's like if it's a business that has their whole thing is like e-commerce or something. They don't have a brick and mortar storefront. You're basically going over there and just kicking over their stack of blocks and saying, see you later. They can't do anything. They got to redo all that. So you really want to, if you can catch it in a test, get it in the test environment. But you may not have that opportunity. It may have been deployed, and now you're doing your testing. You find out that there's a possibility of this. It's one of those things that if you're being smart about it and you're really doing to the best of your ability, you're gonna ask them, is this something that there's a concern here that this may actually cause some destruction of data or cause something to go down? Do you want me to proceed?
Yeah, early on in that agreement that we're generating with the customer, all those risks really need to be laid out and decided on then, and Guido makes a good point. If it's a black box test, they might say, hey, we want you to try whatever the bad guys are going to try, and you don't really know what they have or whether they're going to be susceptible to that, so you got to test it to be a thorough test. But we do the phrase CYA comes to mind. Back in the beginning when we got hired on, we made sure, we said, hey, if we do a thorough test, there's a chance this goes down. Maybe they've got certain hours they want to perform the test in. That way, if there is something happens, they've got time to restore it before business the next day. Or maybe they've got their own test environment. They say, well, if you're going to do something like that, let's test it against this non-production duplication of our production environment, or something like that. But really, the main thing I think is make sure they're aware of it. Don't do anything without letting them know there's a chance, hey, I might crash your server. You don't want to surprise them with something like that.
Yeah, a healthy abundance of caution is never going to hurt you. I'd rather get someone on the phone and just tell them, this is what I found. I do believe there's a serious problem here. So I am not going to wait till I get to the report. I'm telling you right now. And do you want me to actually take advantage of that, or would you just rather go ahead and analyze your code and fix it quietly without me causing some major disturbance? Let them make the choice, but don't just take it on yourself to go through and, I'm going to kick this thing down and see what happens. That's not going to turn out well. Right. You're not going to find too many clients going, that was awesome, do it again. No, you're not going to do it. So be careful on that. If you can, then awesome. I would totally work for a client like that.
Right. So lots of different tools we can use then to put these web servers and the applications that are running on them to their test. Any of them you find particularly useful or we want to take a look at?
We're going to take a look at a number of the things here. There's a whole wide world of these different tools out there. Just a couple more categories to quickly mention. We've got the web crawl. We talked about the web crawlers in here that we can kind of go through and it will look at a site. And then we also have the web vulnerability scanners. I mean, look at the number of web vulnerability scanners are on that, and that's even one of them scrolling menu deals. So you've got a lot of things to bring to bear on a web application that you can check to see what your particular problems are. They've got pretty much everything for almost whatever you want to do. And some interesting names in there too. I love some of the things. What web?
What web?
What web? And Pad Buster. I like that. Grabber. And my favorite, Cadaver.
Cadaver.
Nice.
Yeah. Do you when you're doing a pen test against a web server like this or any web server, do you do like the server application first and the applications that run on it, or vice versa, or does it really matter? Do you focus on one or the other, or you just start going at it and see what you can find?
I will typically, if I can, kind of see what I can figure out, because if you look at it, you probably are getting information on the web server way before you get it on the application, because when you do a reconnaissance phase, you're already pulling some of that already. So you already have kind of that in hand. Now, when you start going over and test the web application, you're going to grab the stuff with the web server anyway.
Gotcha.
And most of these tools will kind of treat them as, they're so tightly in bed with one another that they just kind of figure we'll test them as a unit, not as there's this and there's that.
Very good. Very good. All right. Well, let's do some testing, shall we?
Yeah. To answer your question there too, by the way, do I have a favorite? I don't even know if I'd want to go that far and say there's a favorite. There's some neat ones in here, to be sure. You're going to take a look at these ones in here. We're going to introduce you to. No way we're going to introduce you to all of them, but you're going to look through these and go, yeah, there's some stuff in there that does some pretty some pretty neat stuff, some pretty helpful stuff. You're gonna have to do your own kind of assessment and use your own judgment to figure out which ones are going to be your favorites. And you probably are going to have favorites when you look at stuff like your things like W3AF and Vega and Burp Suite, Nikto. We talked about Nikto's cousin Wikto over in CEH, and so
Nice.
So we had that. So you're going to see that there's crossover. You're just going to have to figure out which ones are going to do the job for you. Cool thing about it is some of these things even have other versions out there that you can also install and upgrade from there. Some of the cases for free. And some of them even have versions that run on Windows. Burp Suite is one of the things that really is only one version of Burp Suite, if you can believe that. There's actually only one version of it. It's written in Java, so you can actually, if you've downloaded this for like the CEH course, if you downloaded it, you could grab that file right off of your Windows system, drop it over on any Linux system, and it'll run exact same way. So that's kind of neat. You don't have to relearn anything.
Yeah, that's uncommon.
Yeah. So that's a good thing with this type of stuff. So we're gonna see some of these things, and it's up to you to choose what your favorites are. There's just, like I said, there's so many different ones. So we've got places that we're gonna start in here. We're gonna take a look at things like the Burp Suite. Like I said, we're gonna take a look at that again. We'll take a look at Vega, something that does the same type of thing with some other stuff thrown in. We are gonna take a look at the W3AF, OWASP, and then we'll get into a few other ones in there along the way. So if you want to kind of follow along, those are the big ones we're going to be using right off the bat, and then we can kind of throw some other ones in, along the way.
Right.
And this is actually a good point here too, by the way. What the client may sometimes tell you what tools that they want to use. Yeah, I have seen that type of stuff happen or heard that stuff happen. I've never had that happen to me, to be honest. What I have had happen is Guido's here saying the client will specify what tools to use because they might be mitigating a previous finding and attempting to reconstruct the original findings to compare results.
Try not to compare apples to oranges. If you had somebody come in and do a test and they used a certain tool, they got a set of results, you think you fixed them, and so you want somebody to come in and use the same tools to see if those results have changed, maybe?
Yeah, it very well could be that. The situations that I've had that kind of sort of talk to this is the client will have me come in and has a report that they've generated in XYZ tool, whatever it is. They'll bring that in and say, well, this is what our guy found, or this is what we found, and we ran this, and we're concerned, and we'll talk about it. They will not usually tell me, well, we want you to run the same tool. What they're going to say is, well, can you double check this or do a more thorough assessment to see if this is it or there's more problems we have here. So I will use whatever tool I want and techniques I want to use to do a thorough examination to see what the problems are. And once I have that, then I will get my report and give it back to them and recommend changes. And what they'll do is they'll take that, my report with my recommendation on changes such as they are, implement those, and then they themselves may take that same tool and rerun it. Cause it's within their rights to say, hey, can you run this yourself, the same tool yourself, and check it? Now, I may tell them, and I may tell them if they were ever be asked something like that, which I haven't. If they were to ask me to say, could you run the same tool, I might tell them, well, I have my own stuff that does the same type of thing, and I will go ahead and use those tools instead if you're okay with that. And I can't see a client saying no. Clients usually, if they're calling you in as a pen tester as the expert, more than likely they're just going to say, okay, well, we called you as the expert, so you go ahead and you do what's appropriate, which you feel is appropriate, and so I'll take it from there. But they could ask this, it's well within their rights, and you're right, that does happen. I haven't had it happen to me, but they very well could do that sort of thing. Who knows, maybe I may have someone that would do that to me in the future. I just haven't had it yet.
Very good. All right, well, Sean, I tell you, looking at our clock, we're getting a little low on time here. Do we want to take a look at these tools in our next episode?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the best thing. I wanted to give kind of like an overview of the different categories of tools, so everyone was kind of on the same thing. We talked in our first segment about what web applications are and some of the issues revolving around them. And now, because we have so many tools, I wanted to use this segment to talk about, give you an overview of the different types of tools that we have. And that was a very, very high level look. So what we'll do is, we should do another our segments now looking at the individual tools, so you can really get a good look at what these are, and even go ahead and configure them yourself and try them out. So that's what we'll have coming up.
Sounds like a plan to me. All right. Well, you heard it, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to call it there for this particular episode. We hope you enjoyed watching it. Remember, stay tuned. We got another episode coming up. We're going to take a look at some of the tools we can use to do our web server and web application testing. So stay tuned for that. But for now, signing off for IT Pro TV, I'm Mike Roderick.
And I'm Sean Ariano.
And we'll see you next time.